Organizational productivity is linked to the organization's culture. If the organization's culture is one of which stuffs out ideas, limits creativity, or enables backstabbing, then it's going to implode. However, if your organization embraces a culture where people can talk, collaborate, and resolve conflicts, then it's destined to be a highly productive one. Today, my guest, Liz Kislik, and I discuss why organizational culture is so important to her, what a highly productive culture actually means, how leaders can create highly productive teams, and many more other topics. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, episode 94, Creating Highly Productive Cultures with Liz Kislik. Welcome all to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. It's great to have you here. It's again your Chief Leadership Officer, Scott McCarthy, bringing you the world's best guests in leadership topics and how you can lead yourself, your teams, or your organizations so that you can be a better leader. And that's why we're here, folks. We're just here to help you out and hone your leadership skills. And you know what? I'm doing the same thing just like you. I'm honing my leadership skills with these interviews, just like today's with Liz. So thanks for coming out. Thanks for coming out and listening. And like my good friend Chris Williams says, you know what? If you like it, tell your friends. Because today you're going to listen to an episode which you're going to want to tell your friends. Liz is a hoot. We have an absolute great time talking about highly productive cultures. Before we dive into that, I am getting really back into the groove here. For the past few months, you notice a little shift and change in the way things have been moving here at Moving Forward Leadership. And that's just because, you know what, I'm doing my master's full time. Second master's. I know, I'm bonkers. But it is what it is. So I'm doing that full time, and I'm also trying to balance my requirements between that, my family life, and of course, you, the listener. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you. That's what I'm telling you. I'm getting back into the groove. I'm figuring out my mojo, and I'm figuring out how I can ensure that I keep rolling back to the schedule and back to posting and just back to being completely there for you as I have in the past and what you expect. So I've balanced that out, and that's what we do as leaders, right? We balance, we figure things out, we prioritize, we balance the things out, and then we make it better as we go forward. And this is exactly what I'm doing, folks. You know what? I had a big shift. I had to re-look at my priorities. Now they're set. I've now re-looked at how my life works and how my schedule works. And, you know, I've identified times when I can focus on you and developing your leadership skills and helping you develop your leadership skills. So just to say, getting back in the groove. And I'm excited for it because that means I get to bring great guests like Liz to you today. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get to the show, shall we? So Liz, who is she? She is a management consultant, executive coach, a facilitator. She's helped clients such as American Express, Girl Scouts, Comcast, Janssen Pharmaceuticals. She looks at finding the worst problems and straightening out their top and bottom lines for organization. So her specialty is developing high-performing leaders and teams, and that is why she's on the show. And not to mention, you know what? She's also a frequent contributor to the Harvard Business Review, Forbes, I'm sure. And she also gave a great TED Talk on why there's so much conflict at work and what we can do to fix it, which is in the show notes. And by the way, if you want to check out those show notes, just go to movingforwardleadership.com/94. So that's it for the preamble. Let's get down to business. Let's talk about how you can create a highly productive culture with Liz Kislik. Liz, welcome to the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks.
I know, it's great to have you. We had to reschedule one time, but here we are now. That's actually pretty good in the podcasting world, honestly.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. There's often multiple reschedules, but here you are. You're here now. You're with me. You're with my audience. It's great to have you here. And we're going to be talking about organizational culture and productivity, and of course the negative side that comes along with that and the conflict. But what I wanted to know first is like, why is that so important to you?
Oh, well, I like things to work well. And things don't work well automatically on their own.
That's right.
You actually have to take care and put in forethought and be ready for contingencies. Things working well is not actually necessarily a natural state, and it's not an intuitive frame of mind necessarily. I'm sure you know people, I know people, they think everything's going to work well and they're consistently late or forget their stuff or, have all kinds of hassles because life can be very productive, but it's not always easy. And that's doubly true about work life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. And I love how you framed that out. And actually, it kind of dovetails into my next following question is like, you mentioned a couple of things about people showing up on time, people doing work, blah, blah, blah. But when we talk about a highly productive culture, what does that actually mean? Is it, is it just people showing up on time? Is it just people talking, working through a problem? Like, what does it actually mean to have a highly productive culture within your organization?
The first thing I would say is that there is not one set of definitions or values or terms. Because it actually varies based on the nature of the work that's being done, what the founding principles were, those kinds of things. There is variability. But in general, I would say that there are a few big chunks. One chunk I would call either attentiveness or curiosity. It is looking to see what's happening as opposed to just making assumptions about it or living in your head. It's everybody actually paying attention. So that's one. A second one is a kind, it's similar, but it's different. And that's a listening culture in which everybody is paying attention, but paying attention to how are other people operating? What's different from what I expect? What's different from the way I am? And can I take that in? And actually being willing to take that in, you need the attentiveness and the curiosity to do it, but it's a sort of refinement on it. And understand it deeply so then you can make good choices and decisions.
I really like that idea of, not every, you can't have a cookie cutter solution, right? Not every organization is exactly the same. Not everyone fits into the mold or the framework perfectly. And I often say that to people as well. You have to look at it like an overlay. Like, okay, yes. What fits, what's inside, what's outside, right. What lines up perfectly, and how do you adjust and mitigate and stuff like that.
Right.
So how do leaders actually go about that and creating these productive teams and creating these productive organizations in looking at it from that context? So
if you don't mind, I'm actually going to give you one more thing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
No, that's okay. It's really important that there be, and this gets called different things, different places, so I'm going to give it different names. Accountability, implementation, execution, all the good ideas in the world don't get you forward if you can't actually do the work itself. Make it happen, get it done. I'm not talking about being perfect. Lots of things get missed. You drop the ball, you're prototyping something, it doesn't work, you're experimenting, new things need tweaking. But knowing, here's what we want to accomplish, here are our steps to do it, and then getting it done. because the first two things I told you about are all about a kind of openness, seeing what's there, the deep listening, but you also have to be able to take action and be accountable. Otherwise, it falls apart.
Makes absolute perfect sense. And now I think that would led quite well into my question about 30 seconds ago, right?
Okay, good.
And how leaders actually go about in creating this within their teams, within their organizations. You know, is there a step process? Do you have an idea of a framework that they can follow? What are some great tips? All those things.
It starts from the top. The behaviors at the top, whether those are founders or current leaders, are excruciatingly important, because if the leader can't or doesn't do any of those things, everybody notices it, and then they're off the hook. There will be some people, there are always some people who are trying to do those things or parts of those things, but if the leadership is not paying attention, is not listening deeply to the needs of others, and is not holding themselves accountable, it is very, very hard for the rest of the organization to do better than the leaders. So the responsibility for culture and living out whatever you say your cultural norms are starts with the day-to-day, actual, real live behavior of the leaders.
Leading by example.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And everybody's watching, you know. They all know. You can't even imagine what people notice, watch for in their leaders. What they eat for lunch, whether they eat lunch, what time they go home, how they talk to you, whether they look at you when they talk to you, whether, you know, all those things, they're all data points.
So as a leader, I don't know if better is the right word for here, but anyway, we'll use better for the sake of time. The better you are at, you know, ensuring that you're setting the example, you're doing the things that you want your people to be doing. You are treating everyone with respect. You are actually being productive yourself and getting information out, making those big decisions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, will impact your organization downwards because you're setting that tone.
Yes. The second thing that happens, because you're setting that tone, you are in good standing when you require it of others. I don't mean you have to be able to do everybody's job, but one of the examples you gave was perfect. Respect. It is so interesting when you have a leader who is not respectful of, say, people's time or people's input, or their lives, for that matter, but thinks they are supposed to be to each other, or thinks they are supposed to be to her. Then you have a real gap. Then you have a kind of, I'm thinking of D words, divisiveness. You're separating yourself from your people in the first place. And almost a kind of, I'll call it, I'm not sure if deceitfulness is the right word, but you're almost living a kind of lie, or certainly a fantasy life. Because if you are not putting those things out and you are requiring them of others, it's very hard for your team to be on the level with you. How can they say to you, yeah, but you're not here at 9:00 to greet customers, if, say, that's part of the leader's job too, or you're not here to support us when we have to meet customers. So how do we talk to you about the other things that bother us? Because we can't criticize you for this big thing that's right in the middle of the room and we all see it every day.
No, that makes absolute sense. And I guess I would assume that the better you are at all of those things, the better you are as a leader to enable those hard conversations that people they're not necessarily comfortable having all the time.
I don't know if it makes you better. It gives you standing so that when you do it, you're taken more seriously. To get better at the hard conversations, well, I would say, and you might agree, those behaviors, those modeling behaviors we're talking about, those are like table stakes. But then you also have to have the kind of courage and empathy that lets you have a tough conversation without being brutal. We've all seen leaders who are brutal, unnecessarily so, and without being so nervous and anxious that you're unclear and you pussyfoot around and people actually don't know what you're talking about and they try to give you the answers you want, but it's like, trains passing in the night.
Yeah, no, that's all great stuff. I 100% agree. I think I'll rephrase my question because it wasn't exactly what I was getting at. The better you're at doing all those things, like we discussed about showing the example, being there, blah, 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 enables your people, I guess, enables you to be more approachable to your people so that they can have the harder questions.
Very good.
Discussions with you.
That I totally agree with, because then they feel like you are legit.
Right.
And so then they want to bring you triumphs when they have them, not just to show off, the way you might when you're trying to curry favor with somebody you don't really trust, but because it's exciting, because it's real to me, so I'm sharing it with you. And also problems, because it's real to me and I know you would care.
Right.
So I feel that I can share it with you without putting myself in desperate risk.
That's right. Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense and just enables people, the credibility for you, the approachedness. And most importantly, people start telling you what you need to know versus what you want to hear.
Yes.
And I don't know how many times I've heard and seen scenarios where the leader is being told what people think they want to hear is what they actually need to know. And the problems that has caused have just been exponentially increased.
Right. Look, Scott, that's why I can pay my bills, right? Because people don't tell leaders what they need to know. I get hired in many cases to come in and find out what on earth is going on so that then we can deal with what the leader knows. Often in my role, I act as an intermediary or an interpreter to help the leader actually hear and understand what the leader needs to know, that the leader may have not cared about before, been avoidant of before, or in some ways not have been treated by the staff as worthy of knowing.
No, I like it. I like it. So let's flip this on the head a little bit, and we're talking about highly productive teams, highly productive culture, one that basically is people leaders set the example. People you don't necessarily follow that cookie cutter template, but what happens when people don't follow what's being said? What happens when people are not necessarily following the example of the leader within an organization? And essentially conflict starts brewing, right?
Right.
Conflict within an organization starts brewing for one of two reasons. Either the leader's not giving the proper communication out, or the people within the organization are deciding not to follow it.
Or there's just I guess this falls into your first category of the leader not being clear enough.
Right.
Because sometimes there's confusion or noise in the system. There are additional messaging. The leader says this, but my customer says that. Then the individual employee, in effect, has to either internalize that conflict or bring it to the team or the leader to say, how should we resolve this if they can't resolve it themselves? So the first thing is not necessarily to treat it as conflict, but to find out why it's happening. And so I want to suggest that you don't find out why it's happening by going to someone and saying, why is this happening? Because, that makes people all defensive.
Right.
First of all, wait, do I have the answer? Do I know what I'm supposed to answer? And second, if I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing because we already have a bad relationship, I certainly don't want to tell you. And you're coming at me like I'm already wrong. So that's all disruptive. But asking how is often better than asking why. How did we get to this point where I think I explained this and you seem to be doing that? So please tell me, was I unclear, or is there something else going on that I don't know about?
That's interesting. So you basically flicked around Simon Sinek's whole start with why, and instead of starting with why, you're saying to start with how.
Well, they're for two different reasons. Because when he's saying start with why, that's for vision. That's for mission. I'm talking about repair.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the why question, in effect, for both Sinek and for me, is what is the meaning of this to you? That's a deep question. Mm-hmm. If you think somebody's going to be defensive, it's not smart to start there. Start with something more gentle. Oh, explain the mechanics to me.
Right.
Tell me how it happens. Oh, I see. Now tell me, what made you make that choice? Even then, I didn't say, why'd you do that?
Makes sense.
Okay, I'm not saying never say why. And if you have a great relationship, forget everything I said and just say what you would naturally say. But as we know, in many cases, there isn't a wonderful relationship.
No, for sure. Because usually if the relationship's that great, you wouldn't have gotten to the boiling point where there would be a nasty conflict anyway. Because the communication lines are open, they're understood, you're talking the same lingo, you feel comfortable with each other, etc.
Right. And it's, the metaphor of the bank deposits. You've been depositing into the account of good relationshipness.
Right.
And so if something goes wrong, you can go back and say, oh, I got off course somewhere, or I think we got something screwed up together. Can we go back through and figure out what happened?
Absolutely. So you start with the how. What's next?
Okay, so how did we get off course? Please explain to me. Then we have the explanations. And then this all goes into the details and what the circumstance is, because it might just be, let me think of a silly example. It might just be that somebody was cleaning out their desk one day and so left their garbage can outside their desk area because they were doing so much work. And then other people see that and say, gee, I shouldn't have to have my garbage can under my desk. It's in my way. I'll put it outside my area too. And all of a sudden you have, I'm making this up completely, but you have a line of trash baskets outside everybody's thing, and it's now a danger. People could trip. You have unsightly garbage. I'm making this up,
I know.
So how did it come to be that everybody has their trash baskets outside their area? And then you can talk about, well, is that good for us or not? Here are the pros and cons. So taking apart the thought process that got us there. Now, in the trash basket case, I don't know. I did it because I saw Steve did it and it looked good. And I thought if he was doing it and it was easier for me, I would do it too. Sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes it's not a deep thing. But sometimes it is a deep thing. I'll give you a different example. You have a family business and two siblings just happen to disagree with each other. And one of them runs sales and marketing and one of them runs operations. You can pretty well predict that there will be some hard feelings between the operations group and the sales and marketing group. that may, in the immediate realm, be related to the actual work they have to do, but actually come from the fact that the modeling that they see is that sales and marketing and operations don't get along well and don't trust each other.
Yeah, you hear about that all the time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's just organizational history. Unfortunately, it gets inbred and is like, those people across the road.
Yes.
Like, you don't like them.
Yes.
But you don't know why. You don't know the story behind it.
Right.
And often in times in large organizations, unfortunately, it's a personal clash between two leaders, and that just trickles down because they go back to their individual corners.
That's right.
Start complaining about the other side, and that trickles down. That goes from senior management to middle management down to the lower levels all the way through. And it's like, oh, you're from the other side? Never mind. I'm not supposed to talk to you.
You know what's really funny? The original people who were acting in this negative way toward each other, they don't even have to be there anymore.
Yeah. It'll just carry on.
It carries on. It
stays a part of the culture of the organization, the company, or whatever it is.
Correct.
I'm in the Canadian Army, and you would be surprised, but believe it or not, there are types of units that don't like other types of units.
I would not be surprised.
Right? It's like, what?
Right.
You're the Army. Everybody's supposed to get along for a common goal. Yeah. Well, you know what? Some people just don't get along, and there's no rhyme, no reason for it. It's just they're on the other side.
So you raise a wonderful point. There is supposed to be a common goal.
Exactly.
And one of the things that works as the beginning of an intervention is to remind everybody of the common goal and to ask what they are doing to further that common goal, and whether they have any behaviors that actually get in the way of meeting that common goal. And start to look at, how do we do our work? And when you have steps 1 through 6, do all steps focus on the common goal? Or are any of them focusing on getting what you need from those people over there that you don't like to work with?
Right.
And when you broaden the view of what's going wrong, and you go back to common goal or common values, you can often get people to look more candidly at how small and petty are the disputes.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll throw out an example. So one of my previous jobs, I was a commander of a logistics squadron. So 200 soldiers divided in 3 different distinct troops. One was transport, one was maintenance, and the third one was supply.
Yep.
Maintenance and transport guys don't get along. Why? Because transport guys break trucks, maintenance guys fix the trucks, but they don't fix the trucks fast enough for the truckers to go ahead and drive them. Supply guys don't like either one of them because they're stuck always ordering the parts that no one's happy because they're not showing up fast enough.
Right.
So I used to always use this example and reminding people of the common goal. Like, we're all interdependent here, folks.
Right.
Transport guys need to deliver the goods. The only reason how transport guys deliver goods is because the maintenance guys make sure the trucks are on the road by using the parts that the supply guys that bought in for them. Oh, by the way, the thing that's on the back of the truck in the first place was bought in by the supply guys as well.
Right.
So, you know what? If one of us fail, the whole house of cards,
the whole chain,
falls apart.
Absolutely. One of the really helpful things to do, but you have to invest the time and the effort, is you let people from the teams shadow each other.
Right. Yeah.
And actually learn not just who I think they are, but what they really do. And that goes back to the thing I said about paying attention and being curious. And then letting it in. You listen to their stories about how they do their jobs and what hassles they hit. And then you learn, oh, that actually is a tough job. No wonder, he's so sour on Tuesday morning if a shipment doesn't show up when it's supposed to on Monday.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. More understanding of what the other person truly goes through as they are trying to meet the mutual goal can be very helpful.
Absolutely. And I would even suggest that even do that on an informal basis of just outings or dinners, lunches, whatever have you. Just getting together, making the crowds mingle, mix into each other. So people will actually make those relationships, and they are based not only just on the work side, but eventually people become friends and they start understanding, developing those deeper bonds. And all of a sudden, it's 4 p.m. on a Friday. Like, oh my God, this broke. Like, I need it for Monday morning. And then the person on the other side knows that person and is more willing to go, be above and beyond to help them out for the greater good in the end.
Right. So that works, I think, when the tensions are at a moderate level.
Yeah, for sure.
When they're really bad, they don't want to get to know each other.
No.
Right? They're actually resistant to that. And then the only route you have is through the work itself. Yeah. It's actually getting them to sit down, map out day by day, even minute by minute if you have to. What are the specific things that they need to do, and what are the things that have a negative impact on them, and how and why and all of that, and have them actually see it all and start to experience some of that. Because there are times when go for a drink with that guy, forget it.
Right.
And
to loop all that back to the beginning of our conversation about developing a productive culture, is that's how productivity increases.
Yes. Right. Yes, because when people trust each other, if they see something going wrong, they tell the other one. You don't have withholding of information. You don't have gloating. I'm sure you've been places where you've seen gloating.
Oh, yes.
Okay. As soon as you see gloating, that is such a true danger sign. I like that guy fine, but isn't it just too bad that he has to, that's really bad stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome, fascinating things, Liz. I'm sure we could talk for hours on end on being productive, establishing productive cultures, conflict and conflict resolution. But I think if we can summarize it quickly, it starts from the top. There is no cookie cutter solution. And in order to resolve that conflict, start with how, not with why, and make sure you find ways for people just to get to know each other and work better together.
Yes. Very good. Good summary.
So before we wrap up here, I still got a couple last questions that I like to ask my guests. And as one question in particular, I ask all my guests to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. And it's to you, Liz Kislik, what makes a great leader?
So in some ways, I think it is similar to some of the things we talked about at the top. I think openness is really important. So I'm going to put that in the category of emotional intelligence, because that pulls together a lot of the stuff about attention and deep listening and et cetera. The modeling goes in there too. So I would say that emotional intelligence. I think the ability to finish things is hugely important, not personally, but to make sure they get done. That's where the accountability piece is. To help everyone recognize that they are on a common path to meet a common goal. So if you have the emotional intelligence, you have the drive for completion, and you have the ability to hold up the common goal and use that to inspire people, you're probably in decent shape.
Awesome. And before we wrap up the show here, one last thing. I'm going to flip the mic over to you. How can people follow you? Can they find you? Feel free to give yourself a shameless plug. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So the easiest, best way is probably my website, which I'm assuming you'll put it in the show notes so I don't have to spell it right now. Yep, good.
Not your first rodeo.
Okay. No, that's true. I heard the funniest line once. It seems crazy that it should take only 2 rodeos to be an expert. Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
I never thought about it. I saw that. I thought that was great. But yes. So my website, and actually while they're on my website, if they like this kind of thinking, they can sign up for my weekly blogs and my monthly newsletter. And there's a free ebook that is about how you can manage interpersonal conflict at work that might be useful to folks. And LinkedIn and Twitter, and I'm Liz Kislik all over the place.
Awesome. For the audience, like Liz went and stole my thunder, it's all in the show notes for you. Just go to movingforwardleadership.com/9494, and there is her website, the link for the free ebook, her link for her Twitter profile, the link for her Twitter or LinkedIn profile, and as well the YouTube video of your TEDx speech.
Oh, thank you for remembering that for me.
No worries. I got your back. But Liz, again, thank you for coming out. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor, and talking to you today about such an important topic, because unfortunately it's one of those topics that I think doesn't get enough attention, but you would probably disagree with me because it keeps you busy and employed. So good for you. Not necessarily good for the organizations out there, but as more we talk about it, the more discussion happens about it, you know what? The place gets better off. So thanks for coming out and talking to me, but most importantly, the audience today.
A pleasure. Thanks so much, Scott.
All right, that's all I got for you fine folks today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the interview. And most importantly, I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, remember R², S², right? Rate and review the show so that it gets a little bit noticed, a bit more. But most importantly, I can help more people, because that's what I'm here for. That's what my guests are here for, is to help more people become better leaders and not being bosses, right? So remember that. R², rate and review. S, share the show. Share this show with someone who you think can relate to the podcast as a whole and today's topic. And then finally, subscribe. Subscribe so that you never miss another episode. And you can do that via your podcast playing app of choice through movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. That's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, stop bossing and start leading. Take care now.